Hello and welcome everybody to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson from me, and as always, virtually always, from Dimitri. It's fantastic to have you all here, and I hope you're looking forward to a really exciting lesson about written comprehension skills. Don't forget to check out the links in the video description, and particularly if you haven't already, why not sign up for the free resources down there? Click the link for the free resources and they're sent to you straight away by email, and they've got detailed answers and all the stuff that I usually do. Dimitri says they're absolutely fantastic resources. Why would you not sign up? And how could you disagree with Dimitri? If you want to take part in the live chat today, it's for subscribers. You can subscribe for free. Just click subscribe underneath the video and you'll immediately be able to join the live chat. Subscribing is great anyway because you find out about stuff I'm doing on the channel. And if you're interested in channel membership and all the stuff that comes with that, like pencil cases and pens, and particularly loads and loads of free videos, then look at the join button underneath the video and investigate channel membership. Dimitri is a channel member. In fact, he runs his own channel membership level and he would be absolutely delighted to have you. Okay, before Dimitri gets too restless and starts biting me and naughty stuff like that, let's get on with... Oh, he's laying down on my lap. That's nice. No, he hasn't. He's off. Let's get on with the lesson. So, oh good, that's loaded. Technology seems to be working today, just about. Let's start looking at the questions. So we've got the text here, and it's from The Lost World. If you haven't already read the text, it's in the worksheet for today's lesson, which as always is linked in the video description. Beg your pardon. If you haven't already downloaded and printed off the worksheet, I strongly recommend that you at least open it now so you've got the text in front of you, and if possible, print off a copy. Right, I've got hair everywhere, it sticks to my tablet screen. Let's get started. So, of course, as will become clear as we go through this, it is very, very important before you start writing comprehension answers to read the whole passage thoroughly. It will make an enormous difference. It will enable you to find things. It will enable you to know who's who. It will enable you not to make a complete mess of your exam. Do not be tempted into doing other things. Read the whole text before you start answering the questions. And don't listen to anyone who tells you otherwise. And here are the questions that we're going to be looking at today. We've got 6 questions. It's an abbreviated version, that means a shortened version of a paper from one of my RSL 11 Plus comprehension books. The book, of course, it contains more questions for this paper. It contains real example answers and really detailed discussions of how to do them, and blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. But we aren't working with the book today. We're working with this worksheet in front of you that, as I say, you can download for free. Why is there a pen on the screen? Who knows? So, first question. Using your own words as far as possible, describe the landscape where the pterodactyls pit is located. Silent P. Pterodactyls. Base your answer on lines 2 to 4. I should say, by the way, that this text, it's an old novel. It's not accurate. It's not scientifically accurate in the way that it describes the pterodactyls. It was based on knowledge at the time and a lot of imagination. First thing you do with a question like this is you analyse it in detail. Using your own words. So that'll be a familiar question type to many of you. So it means that you need to imagine that you've got a friend sitting across your desk and you're explaining it to them in common sense language, not by repeating what's in the passage. Basically, what it doesn't mean is you just go through writing the same stuff down, swapping some words. You have to find your own way of explaining it. Describe the landscape. So the landscape. So not the sounds, not the smells, but the landscape, what the terrain looks like, where the pterodactyl's pit is located. Okay, so not any other aspect of the landscape. Base your answer on lines 2 to 4. So anything not from those lines is not relevant. But there's a flip side to this which is important, very important. You've been told to describe the landscape, you've got 3 lines to write in, and you've been told to look at lines 2 to 4. So it's a fair assumption that you need to include all the main points from those lines. And that if you miss anything out to do with the landscape, you're at risk of losing marks. And there are 2 marks available. That indicates that it isn't just a quick 1-point answer. All those things considered, let's go and have a look at the text, which you, of course, have already read. So lines 2 to 4, very sensible to start off by bracketing off like this, so that you know what you're looking at. We came upon a considerable opening in the trees. Okay, so it's a clearing in the forest. A belt of brushwood led up to a tangle of rocks. Okay, the whole plateau was strewn with boulders. We're not being asked to talk about the whole plateau. We're being asked to talk about the, what's the wording? The landscape, where it's located. So I think we can focus on the tangle of rocks without needing to say what else is going on elsewhere, because we've already got the rocks dealt with. We're walking slowly towards these rocks among bushes which reached over our waists. Okay, so there are bushes that reach over our waists. So we've got an opening in the trees. We've got undergrowth, which is the brushwood and the bushes. And we've got a tangle of rocks. So I think there are three things there. There's the clearing in the trees, there's the undergrowth, and there's the rocks. And if we can get those three things clearly in our own words, then we're going to have done enough for this. The opening in the trees is considerable. There's instead of the trees, we can say the forest. So let's just plunge straight in. There is, so we write in full sentences. Sorry about my handwriting as always. You know how terrible it is. And also I should be showing this. There is it says considerable, there is a large clearing oops, that's me not, I better move the microphone or else I'm going to keep tapping it. Go on, off you go. There we are. Microphone out of the way, shooed away like a naughty cat. That's it, okay. There is a large clearing in the forest. People complain about my handwriting. I tell you, try writing on a glass screen while being me, and you will understand what it's like to produce this handwriting. It's a traumatic experience. There is a large clearing in the forest. Okay, what else do we have? Large clearing in the forest. And there is undergrowth in some places, but not everywhere. So with areas of undergrowth and a tile of rocks, what can we say? We got rocks, we got boulders. Why don't we call them large stones? So with with some undergrowth and a heap of large stones. Yeah, large clearing in the forest with some undergrowth and heaped large stones. Apologies for the handwriting again. I know it's awful. Oh, and I'm not showing the right screen. I'm not good at this, am I? I've only been doing it for a year and a half. There was a large clearing in the forest with some undergrowth and heaped large stones. So we've got all the key elements. It's in our own words. It's clear. It's based on lines 2 to 4, and we've definitely done enough. And so we can move on. By the way, what I just did there, I went back to the question and I checked the things I'd underlined. That's something you always need to do to make sure you've answered thoroughly. Question 2, what do the pterodactyls eat? Why have I included this question? Why are you asking yourself questions, Robert? I don't know. Why are you asking yourself questions? I'm asking myself questions because they are the questions that the student doing the exam should be asking themselves. What do the pterodactyls eat? Ought to be really easy because it's a second question and the information is probably going to be somewhere near the beginning. So we look through, and there's nothing. And we look through some more and there's nothing. And then we start to panic. But if we've read the whole passage in advance, we don't panic because we know where to look. And this is a key reason why you must read the passage in advance, because this question is easy if you know where to find the answer. Our professors gladly stayed there all day because they were entranced. They pointed out the fish and dead birds lying among rocks as proving the nature of the food of these creatures. It's a 2-mark question, fish and birds. Do not be tempted to write fish and dead birds. We don't know whether when they eat them they're dead or not, although they will become dead pretty quickly in the process. They're dead now because they've been eaten or partly eaten. The information is fish and birds. They eat fish and birds. And you don't have to, but you may as well put these in quotation marks because they are quotations. But frankly, it's just a statement of fact. So it doesn't really matter whether you treat them as quotations or not, to be honest. What's going on in the comments? Funny Bunny says Astro Boost's videos are actually really good. I should check them out. Shout out for Astro Boost and their videos. Some people answering earlier questions. Vishwaksen Reddy, it is very wild and full of overgrown foliage, jungle land and giant stones. I think that's almost there. I'm not sure about jungle land because that implies that this is jungly, whereas in fact it's a gap in the forest. So almost. Nadim Khan, there is an opening with a pile of stones and tall bushes. It would probably get the marks, but there is an opening. What does that mean? Does it mean there's a doorway? You mean there's an opening in the forest, basically, in the woodland. So just make sure that you're fully clear. Garo says, I'm sorry I'm late. Not at all. Absolutely fine. Of course, you might want to watch this live, but you also have the option of rewinding it to the beginning, even while I'm live, if strange stress. I sound like Rishi Sunak, stressing all the strangest words in a sentence. But even while I'm live, you can still rewind to the beginning and watch from there if you want to, though of course the comments won't be in sync in the same way. Question 3. We're romping through. Write down the meanings of the following words as used in the passage. I want to underline this, which is why I've done it, because this is really, really, really important. You may be able to look at these words and know what they mean in a certain context, but you do not know what they mean in the passage unless you look. So for example, bearing. Bearing means carrying, doesn't it? I am bearing a large bundle. I'm not, but imagine that I am. So that would mean carrying. If you write carrying for that, you will not get any marks because it is wrong, because it is a possible meaning of the word bearing, but it isn't the meaning in the passage. So if you're still doing comprehensions and explaining the meanings of words without checking the text, stop, because you will throw away marks, and throwing away marks means throwing away exams. And throwing away exams means throwing away chances of getting into the school that you want to get into. Write down is an important phrase. It basically means you do not need to use full sentences. That's what write down means. It's a kind of exam shorthand. You should be able to work that out from the length of the answer space, that you're not going to be expected to squeeze a full sentence into that. Whereas, for example, question 2, what do the pterodactyls eat? You should give a full sentence. They eat fish and birds. It's fine, doesn't take very long. Okay, so gabbling in line 5. Let's have a look. Back up to the top. Let's change colour just for fun, just because we can. Let's go for blue. Became aware of a strange, low, gabbling and whistling sound. Okay. Now, it may not be obvious from the context what this means, to be frank. I think this is testing your knowledge. But if you imagine a typical exchange where someone says, "What did Nora say to you?" And you say, "I don't know, because she was gabbling and I couldn't understand." What does that mean? It means they were talking quickly and were hard to comprehend. It was fast and confused, you could say. So let's go with that. Fast and confused. So there we are. This is a word that you've probably heard. You may not know the meaning straight away, but you think about a context, an example sentence in which you've heard it, you work out what it would mean in that situation, then you try that in the text to see whether it makes sense. Oh, I didn't go back to the laptop. There we are. That's I've written, fast and confused. Does it make sense to say that the pterodactyls made a strange, low, fast and confused and whistling sound? Yes, that's perfectly plausible. In fact, it's a way that you might imagine a pterodactyl speaking. Bearing in line 11. So we got that here. His whole bearing. So what's going on here? Lord John, that's Lord John Roxton, it says at the top, held up his hand. He went forward. He peered over. Then he stood staring as if forgetting us. So utterly entranced was he by what he saw. So he's just there, fascinated. Finally, he waved for us to come on, holding up his hand as a signal for caution. His whole bearing made me feel that something wonderful but dangerous lay before us. So, a few clues that you can use here. Bearing, in the other context we spoke about, meant carrying. But he can't be talking about what he's carrying here, because there's no indication he's picked anything in particular up. So what is it? It's whole carrying. What would that mean? Well, he doesn't say anything because he's just making gestures. So it must be to do with how he looks. His whole carrying, his whole how he looks, the way he carries himself. And what does it mean when you talk about the way someone carries themselves? It means their posture, the way they hold their body. So, his posture. Will do fine. There we are. I'm turned to writing screen again. Nadim Khan bearing his position. Not quite. You get 1 mark for that because you're kind of right insofar as you're talking about someone's appearance and something to do with what they do with their body, how they position it. But it's not their position. It's not whether they're here or whether they're over there, which is what position refers to. It's about how they're standing, how they hold themselves. In this case, it's whole bearing made me feel that's something wonderful but dangerous. It's the kind of look about how he is seen from behind, I think. On to the next. We've got 6 questions here today, by the way, 4, 5 and 6, and then we're golden. But obviously these ones will take a little more time, I think, but we're moving quite quickly, so that should be okay. Why can't the travellers drive the pterodactyls away by hitting them with the stocks of their guns? Okay, now when you've got a question of any sort, but especially a more wordy question, focus on the question word. Okay, what's the question word here? It's why. Okay, by the way, thank you, Nadim. That's very courteous of you. Okay, thank you so much, Robert. It's nice when I comment on an answer and say that it isn't right, when people take the criticism well and courteously, and top stuff. Well done. The question word here is why. And so that means everything in your answer needs to be a reason for them doing this. And if you spend the time telling the story or talking about how somebody feels or describing the landscape or talking about how they try to hit them, for example, you're not doing what's required. So focus on the question word, think about it properly, this is really important, and use that as the basis for how you structure your answer. Why can't they drive the pterodactyls away by hitting them with the stocks of their guns? Now you may not know what stocks of their guns means. That's absolutely fine if you don't know what that means. The question is whether you can work it out from the text. So we go into the text, and because you've read the text already, you know that the relevant bit is down here. Okay, so this is while they're being attacked by the pterodactyls. Oh, I'm getting a bad back. I need to draw my chair, and I was helping somebody move house on Sunday, and that's probably why my back is groaning at me. Anyway, so it says we're looking at we're looking at sort of this section onwards. We beat at them with the stocks of our guns, but there was nothing solid or vulnerable to strike. Then suddenly other stuff happens. So it's in there, it's that sentence. We beat at them with the stocks of our guns, but there was nothing solid or vulnerable to strike. So even if you don't know that the stock of your gun is the thick, solid bit that you rest against your shoulder, even if you don't know that, you can still answer this because the question doesn't actually require you to work that out. So why can't they drive them away by hitting them with the stocks of their guns? Why? And then we look back at the text again, having reminded ourselves of the question. There was nothing solid or vulnerable to strike. So what does this mean? Well, these are big flying creatures. If we go up a bit, we can see that they have huge slate-coloured wings. And what else do we find if we go up further? You've already read all this. I'm just trying to find the things that you'll already have read. I'm just trying to find, there's one thing in particular that I'm looking for, which is really, really important. Oh yeah, they're huge membranous wings. So we can see all these things. Yeah, so they've got wings like membranes, they're huge wings. And they're swirling round them with their wings out. And so when they try to hit at them, what do they hit? Well, they can't hit their bodies because they've got these great big wings in the way. So they can't hit the solid part, their bodies, but their wings are just these kind of leathery membranes, so they aren't vulnerable. You can't really break them just by hitting at them with these, with clubs, which is what they're using their firearms as. So we go back into here, and we deal with this. So they can only reach the animal's leathery wings. Leathery is very unclear in my handwriting. That's a bit better. They can only reach the animal's leathery wings not anything solid and breakable. The wings are, so I'm now fully explaining to make sure, so you might get the marks for that first sentence, but let's be sure. The wings are robust, not, and here's the other key word from the text, so we're trying to use the key words, they are not vulnerable, we underlined. They can only reach the animal's leathery wings, not anything solid and breakable. The wings are robust, not vulnerable. So now we got the two key words from the text, solid and vulnerable. You don't have to quote when answering this question. There's nothing to indicate that you need to give evidence. But quoting those two single words gives you a good structure to work around, because if you've explained those two quotations properly, then you will pretty much by definition have fully answered the question. So sometimes quoting gives you a really good structure, even if you don't have to do it for the marks. Have we done everything? Have we dealt with why? Yes, these are all reasons why they can't drive them away, because they can't strike at their bodies and actually threaten them, do damage to them, and the wings are themselves too robust to be dealt with. So that's a really, really complete answer. And you know, if you've written that you're going to get the 2 marks comfortably. And you've possibly even done a little bit more than is absolutely necessary, depending on the mark scheme. Well done to people who've passed their tests, so like Leila Mahmoudou, who has passed my test, all thanks to you. I reckon it's mostly thanks to you, but I'm really delighted to have helped. Malini, the wings block the body, so not much damage can be done. I think that's a very good answer. It would probably get 2 marks, but it might be worth also saying that the wings are themselves not vulnerable. Someone said there was nothing solid or vulnerable to hit. That wouldn't get the 2 marks, because you haven't actually shown understanding of what that means. You haven't explained why there was nothing solid or vulnerable to hit. If the question says why, and someone can respond to your answer by saying, yes, but why, then you haven't properly answered, if that makes sense. Right, let's go on. Someone says, can they have a shout out? I don't give just shout outs, but I do mention your name if you make an interesting comment and I want to answer it. So, for example, many congratulations to Astroboost, who says they've passed their Adams grammar exams. Their family is being celebrating, which is wonderful. Lovely to have that support. Well done to other people who passed their exams, like Fio, for example. Choose 2 verbs. Right, this is probably the trickiest one for most people, I think. Choose 2 verbs from lines 53 to 65 that you find particularly effective. Give your reasons for choosing each one. This is a classic question. I've done quite a lot of videos, one way or another, on this issue of effective. What it means to talk about effect, what it means for something to be effective. So if something in a text is effective, that means that it has a powerful effect on you. And by you, I mean the reader. So you're talking about things that particularly create a strong emotion, create a very strong mental image, that kind of thing. You're looking for verbs that do that. 2 verbs. Very clear structure here, so you talk about them separately, which makes life easy. From these lines, you must choose things from those lines, or you will probably get no marks for what you pick. Do not make one of the most basic mistakes and pick something that isn't in that section. Do not do that. Give your reasons for choosing each one. Okay, in other words, why is the verb effective? So basically, you've got to pick out two verbs that are interesting, and you have to explain why each one, or how each one, has, why and how are kind of interchangeable here, has a strong effect on the reader. Okay? So that's what we need to do. Let's go into it. 53 to 65. So we need to find that section. It's actually up in front of us already. That's nice. I'm going to rub out the marks we've already got here just to make life a little bit easier. There we are. And let's go for green. Let's be out there. There we are. And this is the section. Strongly recommend you do this. Bracket it off so that you can't head out of the relevant part. Now, there are lots of things here that you could choose. But for example, touched, it's a verb, but I don't know how much there is to say about that. We beat at them. Okay. So that might be one. What could we say about beat? Well, it's very violent. It shows repeated strikes, which helps to convey the defender's desperation. And the fact that they're having to beat at these pterodactyls close up, shows what a vulnerable position they're in. So there's a lot to say about that. Suddenly out of the whizzing, slate-coloured circle, a long neck shot out. I like shot. It makes it seem, and a fierce beak made a thrust of it. So it seems like they're so fast, they're like, boom, like gunshots. It suggests the danger, the extreme danger that these animals pose. And we might even be sort of drawing a contrast with how useless the travellers' weapons are, because they're holding these guns and they're so useless they're having to use them as clubs. So that could well be one to talk about. What else might we pick? I mean, there are loads of things that I'm just sort of skipping through. As I stooped to pick them up, I'm not so sure I could say that much about that personally. Dropped again, I don't think that gives me that much. Broken wings, struggling upon the ground, spitting and gurgling. I like gurgling because it's kind of disgusting, but it also shows the animal's desperation and suffering. So on the one hand, it makes us more likely to pity the animal, because we can imagine how much pain it's in as it makes this sound, but it also makes it seem kind of hideous and like a devil. Yeah, gurgling. So plenty of other things you could pick, but the ones that I've found most to say about, shot, definitely, and I think gurgling edges out beat. I had some slightly more interesting points about that. So, remind ourselves of the question. See what was popping to and fro between the questions and the text when you're doing written comprehension, or indeed any kind of comprehension. Choose two verbs that you find particularly effective. Give your reasons for choosing each one. 3 marks for each. Probably, if you see this, there's 1 mark for picking a valid verb, which is in some way interesting, and then 2 marks for explaining. That would be likely. But just make lots of points, fill the space, and you'll be fine. Slate. So suddenly out of the whizzing slate-coloured circle, a long neck shot out. And we spoke about that already. So, shot is effective, worth using the key language from the question up front to show that you're not repeating the question, but just using some of the key language. Don't waste time repeating the question. Just to show that you are doing what it wants. You don't need to write, I find shot particularly effective, because that is a waste of space. But this is good. Shot is, of course it's good, I'm doing it. Shot is effective because it makes the animals' beaks. Notice the apostrophe on animals because they're the beaks of the animals. And if you've got an of the phrase, that needs an apostrophe. Shot is effective because it makes the animals' beaks seem very fast and deadly, like guns. And then, you might already have said enough, but it's a 3-mark question and we've got all this blank space. So let's make that point about the contrast that I referred to. It contrasts with the uselessness of the traveller's own, I'll say firearms to avoid repeating guns, but it would be fine to repeat guns, it's just for stylistic reasons, of the traveller's own firearms which they are using as clubs. So now we've got a really strong answer for this. We've got the verb shot, or shot out, it's a phrasal verb, is effective because it makes the animal's beak seem very fast and deadly like guns. So we got the meat of our answer there. And now we've added a bit more just to be sure of the 3 marks. It contrasts with the uselessness of the traveller's own firearms, which they are using as clubs. They're not shooting anything with them at this point. Okay, the second one we wanted to talk about. Yogaram says, I'm doing a 10-minute test while listening, lol. Hang on for my tip of the week, which may be relevant to this. Okay, next one was gurgling. So one of the creatures with a broken wing was struggling upon the ground, spitting and gurgling at us with a wide open beak and bloodshot goggled eyes like some devil in a medieval picture. Okay, very vivid description that. You could, don't copy that in your writing, but as a way of thinking about a description, I think that's terrific. Terrific writing. Very melodramatic, but really interesting and well chosen. Okay, anyway, what I think, leaving that to one side, let's get into answering this paper. So, gurgling. And I'm going to be really boring and start in exactly the same way. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Anyway, gurgling is effective. It's kind of an argument for not really changing anything if you follow that logic. So it's not a phrase I particularly love, but it has relevance here. Gurgling is effective because it emphasizes, I know. What is gurgling? Gurgle, 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 gurgle. That sounds like what it's describing. And that means it's an example of has anyone said this in the comments yet? I don't think so. Apologies to anybody who has that I've missed. Because this onomatopoeia, okay, spelling bee. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. Because this onomatopoeia not helps us to, no, it's not helping, makes us see the bird as disgusting and like a devil. See how I worked that quote in? Aha. At the same time, so now we're talking about the sympathy, and we're saying you can feel 2 different things, 2 contradictory things at once. At the same time, now notice I'm phrasing this, it might create, so most people are going to be disgusted by this disgusting noise. Some people, and this is why I've said it might, some people will, however, still feel some sympathy towards it. It might create sympathy for the desperate creatures, apostrophe, suffering. You can't actually read the word I've written, but at least it's punctuated correctly. For the suffering of the creature, so we need an apostrophe on creatures. Gurgling is effective because this onomatopoeia makes us see the bird as disgusting and like a devil. At the same time, it might create sympathy for the desperate creature's suffering. So again, we've written an answer that is nailed on certain to get 3 marks because we've made 2 points, each of them clearly expressed, both of them clearly about the effect on the reader. The first part talks about how it might make us see, and it describes our emotion, which is disgust. The second part also describes our emotion, sympathy. So we're talking about the reader and their response throughout, which is exactly how you need to deal with a question about effect. These are some of the most difficult 11 plus exam questions. So I strongly recommend, if you haven't had to go at the worksheet already, after this lesson, have a go at least at question 5 without watching this again. and then come back and watch this and see how similar what you've done is to what I've done. It doesn't mean you need to have said the same things. You don't need to have chosen the same verbs. But you do need to have done something similar in the way that you focus on the reader's response. And now we end up with a little bit of a doozy, as the Americans say, a relatively straightforward question, but it's another explain in your own words question, as we dealt with earlier. So this is a little bit of a recap. Explain in your own words how the explorers know that they are safe. Line 69. Okay, so we're even given a line reference, which is nice. So line 69, we go on a bit. So Lord John shouts, "Now for our lives!" And they staggered through the brushwood. They're being chased by these pterodactyls that are stabbing them with their beaks that come out like shots, as we've discussed. And even as we reach the trees, the harpies were upon us again. Okay, if you know what a harpy is, it's quite an interesting comparison. If you don't, it's not critical. Summerlee was knocked down, but we tore him up. Tore, that is a good verb here. Think about that one. And rushed among the trunks. So we picked him up or dragged him would be more obvious things to say. We tore him up creates a really vivid image. It's a very good example of something I'm always talking about in creative writing lessons, choosing effective verbs, perhaps slightly unexpected ones that create a really specific impression. Think about this one. I won't do it for you. And rushed among the trunks. Once there, we were safe. Right, so once there we were safe, that's the, there we are. What? Try again. Once there we were safe. For means because, right? So it is about to tell, the author is about to tell us the reason. So pay attention here, okay? It's a pay attention here word. For those huge wings had no space for their sweep beneath the branches. Okay, so what's this getting at? Well, the branches were too close together for the pterodactyls to be able to fly, basically. So we don't want to say branches, but we can say the trees because that includes the branches, right? So the trees were too close together. Oops, done that again. There we are. For the, I'm going to say animals again, just to avoid writing pterodactyls. We're too close together for the animals to fly in and, oops, I think I need to see there, don't you? To animals to fly in and attack. That's it. Simple. The trees were too close together for the animals to fly in and attack. Have we used our own words? So very sensible check is to go, of course it's sensible, I am doing it, I'm always sensible. Have we accidentally repeated lots of words from the passage? So the trees were too close together for the animals to fly in and attack. Once there we were safe, for those huge wings had no space for their sweep beneath the branches. No, we've used very different words, but we've described the same concept clearly, so that is going to be a tick and a comfortable 2 marks. And there we are. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do written comprehension, or some of it. Right, let's push on to this week's It's the tip of the week. It's all of your favourite moment in these lessons. So somebody, luckily for them, I can't remember the name, was saying, I am watching this video while doing a 10-minute test. Now, obviously, I salute your noble character that you are multitasking your revision. The reality is probably that you are not learning much from the 10-minute test or from this video as you try to do both at once. It's a pretty extreme example of something that most people do at some point when they're revising or preparing for something, which is they race through stuff without thinking about how they're doing it and whether it's actually useful learning time. People get a practice paper and they chomp through it from beginning to end and then mark it and go, okay, I got 16 out of 25, I need to improve, and then move on and never look at it again. Have they learned anything from that marking process? Have they gone through and worked out exactly where and how they were losing the marks? Have they looked at, if they have them, a set of example answers and discussions and compared their answers? You can get many such things from me, see the links in the video description. Have they done any of these useful things? No, they haven't. Are you the kind of person who uses this channel by thinking, oh, I'll put an easy 11 plus video on, and you kind of watch it. You don't do the worksheet, You don't come back to it, you don't rewatch any of it, but you tick it off your list, and then tomorrow you watch another one and you tick that off your list. Are you actually learning anything really from these lessons? No, you're not. If you're going to make use of these videos, you need to be doing the worksheets, you need to be repeating, you need to be trying the questions, coming back and rewatching that part of the video. If you watch 10 of these videos really carefully like that, you will learn far more than a person who watches 100 of them, but just goes through them one at a time. And the person who's watching a video while doing their 10-minute test, while I applaud their motivation, they are not going to be learning much from either activity. So, do your practice mindfully and carefully. And often, less practice done more intelligently is a lot more useful than lots of practice done without thought. And that is your tip of the week. And now we're going to move on. I'm going to take a few questions, yah-dee-da-dee-da, and then we're all going to go home. You're already at home. I'm already at home. What am I talking about? What's going on in the questions? You are not showing the screen. I think this is somebody who's watching it a bit delayed and is commenting on something that happened earlier. There were a few moments when I showed the wrong screen, but I think I always corrected it quite fast. Anyone who's watched this for a while knows that I am basically incompetent and has already come to terms with this fact if they're still here. Malini, yay, tip of the week. There's a big delay in these comments. But Malini, I literally can't multitask. Very few people really can multitask. A lot of people believe they can multitask. What they're really doing is jumping from one thing to another. They're not really doing them at once or processing them at once. Some people are good at switching their mind on and off different things, but they're still generally doing one thing at a time. So the main thing is to make whatever task you're doing at the time worthwhile and productive. I'm not claiming that I always do that. I am no paragon, but that should certainly be your aim. Ho ho ho, what can you take to the 11 plus test? It does depend on the exam, but you will be given clear guidelines by the school that you're sitting for. You'll get a letter, or these days probably an email, which will clearly set out what you can take and what you need to take. Read it carefully is my main advice. It depends on the exam. Robert, did you actually wear that pterodactyl costume? No, I didn't. It's a Photoshop job. Robert, I really wanted to say I passed my St. Paul's test. Thank you so much for your help. That's from Stylish Chalet. Wow, fantastic. Many congratulations. I'm very glad to have been able to help. What secondary school did you go to? I was at King's School in Chester briefly. Then I was, well, not that briefly, but I left it when I was quite young. I was 14. I went to Christ Hospital and spent the last 4 years at Christ Hospital. Robert, you sounded like a news reporter. Always. This is the 11 Plus News, brought to you by Robert Lomax and by Dimitri. In today's news, Best the Pro says that Robert has used Photoshop. Nadeem Khan has passed his Slough exam. Debraj Sengupta wants to know whether the pterodactyl costume is my Halloween costume. Whoever explained how Photoshop works perhaps needs to do so again. Malini is writing a story. And that is today's news. There we are, that's my news reporter job. Malini, you're writing a story, but I'm not doing creative writing. Well, if you're writing a story, you are by definition doing creative writing, but I'm being a twit because I know what you mean. You mean you're not doing creative writing in your exam, but you're still writing a story. Malini, you are today's star of the lesson because you've got the point of creative writing, which is that it's a way of making something beautiful and worthwhile and, it's a horrible phrase, but expressing yourself, and that's what it's all about. And the point of creative writing is absolutely not to do exams. That's just an unfortunate coincidence of the way the world works. So, full marks to you, and I hope your story is great. When you've written it, why not share it in the channel comments and other people can enjoy it? What secondary school do you recommend? I mean, do you have any idea how many secondary schools there are in the United Kingdom? And you want me to pick one out? There are many excellent schools. Many really excellent schools. So it would depend on your area and all sorts of things that I don't know about anyway. Nadeem Khan, I am the star of the lesson. Nadeem Khan has a big head, but maybe the star of the lesson. What school is good and competitive? People stop asking me what's a good secondary school. There are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of them. I'm not going to pick one out. Nazreen passed everything, including life. Congratulations to Nazreen. That's very good. Malini's written the first chapter of the story. Stick it in the comments. Let people enjoy it. Nazreen has passed everything a second time. Guys, you don't need to post your comments zillions of times. Okay, there are not that many questions here today, apart from ones that I've already said I can't answer. No, Libby, I was talking about a particular squiggly shape, which did have one sort of angular corner. It was a particular one in a reasoning exam. I didn't mean that squiggly shapes in life have one corner. Sorry if that wasn't clear. Do you recommend the Sevenoaks English papers, says Vishwaksan Reddy? Yes, thoroughly. They're really good practice for written comprehension. They're very hard. They require you to write longer, kind of mini essay style answers. So they won't be typical of all other schools' exams. They're quite unusual. However, they will give you a really good preparation for those long, I was going to say longer, but I thought longer than what, but those long sort of little essay type questions that often come at the end of a written comprehension paper, because that's kind of all of the Sevenoaks comprehension paper. Yes, they're really good practice to do them. Godly, I've just joined today. Your channel is so helpful. Godly, fantastic. And thank you for joining. And I'm glad it's helpful. I hope to see you back next Tuesday at 6 p.m. and all Tuesdays thereafter till the day I die. Goodness me, am I going to be doing these 11 plus lessons till the day I die? I hope not. Well, maybe it'll be tomorrow and then it will literally be true. Also, have you done non-verbal reasoning? Yes, look in the channel. There are zillions of lessons on non-verbal reasoning. Also, seriously, look in the video description and in the comment that I will post after this video is finished, and you'll get a link to a list of every single one of my videos. And then you can find all the ones on verbal reasoning or on, grooming rabbits or whatever it might be. And you can watch them, which will be wonderful for you. Malini, I've shouted out to Calico so many times. You can't get that one past me. Oh, wait, you just did. Some very exam-specific questions. I think we're kind of there. Folks. Enough questions. Let's not drag this out. It's going to be less than 50 minutes. That's short for me, which says something terrible. Right, guys, it's been fantastic to have you here. The music comes back on, and I attempt to summon Dimitri to see if he wants to say goodbye. Dimitri! He's coming. Here comes Dimitri. He's come to say his adieu to you and you and you. There we are. Come on, boy. Come up here and greet your fans. Your fans. And that's it. Here's your fans and here's your temptation. He's eating his temptation. There we are. Num num num. Delicious. Wouldn't you love a temptation? There we are. Don't they look tasty? Okay, it's been fantastic to have you here today. I hope you learned something useful. Check out the links in the video description. Join the channel. Like the video. Do positive stuff on my channel. And, what can I say? Hopefully it'll benefit you. It'll certainly make me happy. And it'll keep Dimitri in temptations, which is, after all, what this is all about. All right, guys, it's been fantastic to have you here. And I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday evening. Don't bite. At 6 o'clock. Bye-bye. What are you up to, Dimby? What are you up to? Oh, you want more? You want another? Okay, you can have another one. Go on then. What a little fatty.